Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we started recording episodes virtually instead of being in the same room together. This created technical issues for us for many weeks. Our sound issues get better beginning with the pros and cons episode. In the meantime, we appreciate your patience with the sound issues that are present in this episode. Dialectical behavior therapy was created in the 1980s by Marsha Linehan in Seattle, Washington.
Today, DBT is taught all over the world.
We're two therapists who believe everyone can benefit from DBT skills.
I'm Kate.
I'm Michelle.
And this is DBT and Me.
Hello, guys. We're glad you're here with us. I sound too cheerful. I know, this is not going to be a cheerful episode, unfortunately. Kate and I made the decision that it was really important that we record an episode about what's been going on in the U.S. over the last week, and really talking about the racism that continues to come to light in our culture and the acts of police brutality that have been taking place in our nation. And this is going to be a different type of episode than usual. Yeah, we did an episode weeks ago about everything going on with coronavirus, but even then in that episode we really wanted to talk about skills and how you can cope and things like that. And really the intention of the episode today is just to create space to talk about what's going on right now, where each of us are at with things, and hopefully that by listening to us share our experiences and our reactions to what's going on right now, that maybe it can bring some comfort to others. And we plan to hopefully, just put out some resources through our Facebook group after this and talk about some in the episode itself. But we just thought it was really important to acknowledge more than anything what's going on. This isn't something that can be glossed over. It didn't feel right for us to be recording just another DBT Me episode. It didn't feel right to us. So that's what we're here to do today. And we are aware that we have a lot of international listeners, maybe some who might know what we're referring to for what's been going on in the United States, maybe some people who have no idea. So we thought it was really important that we give a brief overview about what's gone on. So I'm going to turn it over to Kate to talk about the events that have been unfolding recently.
Yeah. So just over a week ago, on Monday, May 25th, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, here in the U.S., a black man named George Floyd was murdered by police. It was caught on several different bystander videos. Basically, one of the cops was kneeling on the back of his neck for 9 minutes, and during that time he suffocated and was pronounced dead shortly after EMS, emergency medical services, arrived on the scene. Since then, there have been protests across the nation. I don't think a day has gone by where there haven't been any yet, and every day it seems that more cities get involved. All four of the police officers involved have been fired, and one of them has been charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter. But to give more context, at a lot of those protests, there have been more and more and more and more videos of instances of police brutality towards peaceful protesters during that time, which of course is sparking more protests. So we don't know where this is going to go. We don't know what the end state is going to be, but right now there is a considerable amount of, I think it's fair to say, civil unrest in America, focused on specifically the Black Lives Matter movement and on police brutality and racism in America. Does that seem like an okay summary to you, Michelle?
Yeah, I think that definitely captures the heart of it. If people want to know more details, as Kate mentioned, this was caught on video, what happened to George Floyd. So if you have not watched videos of what took place yet, you can absolutely Google, YouTube that, and find lots of information out there. But yeah, I think you really get at the heart of it, which is basically that this man was handcuffed.
Handcuffs behind his back, face down on the ground, not resisting, not fighting, not struggling, and was simply, I don't feel comfortable using any word other than murdered.
Yeah, no, I think it's the appropriate word to use because that's exactly what happened. They killed him because of their actions. And, and just since that time, as you also mentioned really nicely, that there's been a lot of people, coronavirus and everything, coming out of their homes, marching in the streets, protesting, saying we need to do something about this because it's abhorrent what happened to him.
As it just seems like something has tipped, and finally more people are taking notice. The sad truth here in America is that this isn't
uncommon.
This is far from a first. Yeah, this isn't uncommon. People of color, especially Black men in our country, are being killed by police often. I think it is one thing that the ubiquity of cell phones and social media is making harder and harder for those of us with privilege to ignore. Because it's been happening. It's been happening and happening and happening, but now we have, incontrovertible video documentation that people can't, wiggle their way out of or around.
Yeah, exactly. Social media is holding these officers accountable for their actions because it's spreading the word. It's showing it to, millions of people. It can't be ignored when it's right there captured on video so clearly how wrong this was. And yeah, like you just said, this is an occurrence that happens regularly. This is not rare. Even if it does not result in a person's death like it did in the case of George Floyd, it results in people being hospitalized for injuries or being shot or, it results
wrongfully incarcerated.
Exactly. There's so many other end results that happen when police are wrongfully discriminating specifically against Black men, and their actions have these horrible consequences that have, I think, been just kind of written off or excused away for a long time. And
I think there's been way too much. But what was the Black man doing?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so I think what the most, like you were talking about, Michelle, I mean, not that there aren't other ones that have been, horrific, but, just the length of time, the indifference, and the obviousness that he was not a threat, because so often the retort from the police has been, well, I was afraid.
Yeah.
I was afraid for my life. And the video makes it abundantly clear that no one could or would have been afraid of that man.
Yep.
In those minutes leading up to his death.
Exactly.
He was incapacitated.
Yep. And in watching the video, I mean, there were so many moments that were disturbing to me, but one of the things specifically focusing on the actions of the police officers, because what happened was there, multiple cop cars, as is common when the police are called, multiple cars start arriving on the scene. So there were two officers that were there first, and then there were two others that arrived. And the two that arrived later, one of them was the officer who kneeled on his neck, which is the officer who's gotten the most attention because that was the officer who ultimately did the thing that killed him. Yeah. And that officer shows up and just, it almost seems like that's just the initial thing that he goes to. And as he's kneeling on his neck, just, I don't know, he seems so nonchalant.
Yes, yeah.
He just really genuinely seems to not care.
Indifference.
Yes,
Indifference.
that's the perfect word to use. And almost as if he, just was, not listening to what George Floyd was saying when he was saying, I can't breathe, I'll get in the car, just let me up, basically. I'm paraphrasing, I'm not getting the exact words correct there with what he said, but, that officer, just no concern is really how it looked. And that's something that was so alarming to me.
Like it was just another day.
Yep, just another day. And coming onto the scene and just, and again, I wasn't there, didn't see it, but looking at this video, coming onto the scene and just like immediately going to do that. Not really, it looked like talking with the other officers of like, what's going on here? Who had been there earlier. Just going over and taking this action that was a completely inappropriate action to take. It's scary.
And even broke their own department's protocol. Not that.
Yes.
I mean, even if they had protocol that supported it, that would just be another problem. But
right.
I don't know. And felt obviously he knew he was being recorded, and I think that's even the other thing. Like there was no shame.
Yes.
There was no shame, no embarrassment, no fear of repercussions. Like he looks right at the people videotaping him killing this man.
Yeah, that's what he's doing. He's like looking around at the other people, and he's not looking down at the man who he's kneeling on. Yeah.
Him.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, nothing like that. Yeah. So this is really heavy, and Kate and I, we just both want to share really vulnerably with where we're at. This is something I should have mentioned at the beginning, but Kate and I are both white cisgender women.
Yeah.
We carry privilege, and so because of that, we're speaking from our own perspective as we share in this episode today. But as for sharing where I'm at, I honestly, I'm going to read a Facebook post that I made this morning, because it seems, when I wrote it this morning, it really summarizes where I'm at, and then I'll share a little bit after I read it. But this is what I wrote. I wrote down, up until this point, I have been silent. I have been part of the problem. As I've scrolled through my Facebook feed over the past week, it's filled more and more with my friends raising their voices to speak out on police brutality and racism in this country. And up until this point, I have been silent. At various times, I have thought all of these things to myself. I don't have anything good or different or special to add to what's already being said, so I don't know what to say. I haven't watched the video of his death. I wasn't there for the march, so I can't speak on anything. It's too hard to read and look at all this, so I'm just going to keep scrolling. I don't have time to read all of this, so I'm going to keep scrolling. I don't want to be one of those people who makes a Facebook post and then doesn't do anything. Do you see it yet? I am part of the problem. Actually, I'll take it further. I am the problem. Not just part of it. I'm a white person who has used my privilege to look away and not participate. Even though I have read posts and nodded my head in agreement, I am silent. I've not taken any action. I'm the problem. Starting today, I am making a change. I woke up this morning and I watched the video of his death. I'd been avoiding it, scared of what I might see. But you know what? There are too many Black and Indigenous people of color in this world who are scared every day that it's going to be them next. My discomfort and fear watching a 9-minute video is so small and insignificant compared to theirs. It's high time I made myself uncomfortable. I've been putting it off for too long. That was my first step, and I'm making a promise publicly on here that it will not be my last. I'm going to throw out all of the pitiful excuses I listed above and actively figure out what my next action step will be to do something to fight for justice and to not be a bystander anymore. Maybe you've been like me and you haven't wanted to say anything for your own various reasons. Throw your reasons out the window and say something. Social media has a far powerful reach. Show your friends and family members that you won't be silent any longer if you have been up until this point. Then figure out your own action step. The only way this stops is if everyone joins in and commits to fighting against the racism that runs so deep in our country. Here's my commitment to start now. And it's really hard, I think, to talk about not doing things. It's hard to admit that we are the problem. And, you know, I don't know why it took me about a week to finally say, this ends here. I've got to do something. I really think that part of what contributed to it for me was seeing some people on my Facebook friends list who are not typically the type of people to get political on Facebook or anything like that. I mean, they don't really say much when big things come up. And they were saying something, and they were saying it so well that I was like, what is holding me back? Is it really the shame that I feel of, you know, just not knowing what to do? It's a huge, overwhelming thing that's going on right now to look at. And sometimes when we feel overwhelmed, as Kay and I have talked about in the podcast before, we fight, flee, or freeze. And in this case, it is so important that we fight. That means doing something. And I think it's really important to share that I made this post pretty recently, so I'm still figuring out what that's going to look like for me. I have seen some of my friends on Facebook be really proactive in going to the marches that are going on, going online to make donations to certain organizations. I have seen some people in my life be really active, and I want to figure out what that looks like for me. Because I think it's going to look different and unique for each of us, what actions we choose to take and what path we're going to go down. So I'm not going to sit here today on this podcast platform and say, well, this is what I've been doing, so this is what I think you guys should do too, because I really think it's so important that each person do some exploration to figure out what feels right for them in terms of taking action.
And what's accessible and what's safe.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm just aware that it's not something that we can sit by about anymore. And I've been asking myself this really hard question when I read the list of excuses that I wrote down in the post of like, what am I prioritizing more than taking the time to do something to help fight this issue of racism in our country? Like, nothing is more important than making sure that innocent people live. And what am I prioritizing in my life personally that's taking away time and energy that I could be putting towards that fight? Because there is nothing more important than making sure that our fellow human beings of all races feel safe and protected. There is nothing more important than that. Point blank. And so it's so important that all of us reflect on what can I contribute, what can I do. And Kate and I think we'll talk a little bit at the end of the episode of like, you know, some little things that we might post in the Facebook group and stuff like that. Some things that we recommend as, I would say, a starting point. Again, for me, the starting point that I referenced in my post was actually watching the video. That was where I needed to start. I needed to start by not looking away anymore. And so we're going to basically post some, again, like starting points. But, you know, then how are you going to take that for yourself and go further with it? You know, I'm still figuring that out for me. I hope that all of you listening can figure it out for you too. So that's where I'm at. Kate, you want to talk a little bit about where you're at? What's been going on for you with all of this?
Yeah.
I know.
I feel so incredibly conflicted. You know, as you were talking, you know, I was listening, but also, you know, trying to gear up and think about what I was going to say. And the first thing I wanted to say is that I'm heartbroken. But then I also feel like, why is this new? Like, why did it take
this long to wake up?
Yeah. To get, I mean, I went to grad school. We talked all about diversity and privilege, and, you know, I've seen news report, like, why is this the thing? And, like, you know, I've also seen, you know, posts and articles and stuff about how, you know, people of color don't necessarily need to be stewarding my white heartbreak right now on top of their own. But you know, it's true. I am heartbroken, and it's, I don't know. I think you know, like Michelle, I've also been silent this last week. And I think part of that for me has been this sense of everything being really surreal. And actually, you know, before our recording today, I was thinking about that a little bit, and I thought, oh my God, that's another place where my privilege is showing that this can seem surreal, right? That this wasn't already an absolute part of my reality. So I have been, you know, toggling between overwhelmed and numb and detached for the last week or so. I have been consuming a lot of, like, oddly enough, like Michelle, actually today was the first day I actually watched video of George Floyd's actual death. But all week I have been seeking out and watching videos of the police brutality that have been going on at the protests. And I don't have you here. We have a whole podcast about naming emotions, and I don't even know the right word for that. It's horror and anger and disgust, and rage and sadness, and it's just this incredible cocktail. Before, you know, Michelle and I always talk about, you know, a little bit of a, you know, game plan for what we're going to record before we do it. And before we talked today, I was like, oh, motherfuck, what if, you know, are we supposed to tell people how to cope with this? Because I don't know how to cope with this. I don't have the answers to that question. I was terrified of trying to record today and trying to tell people how to cope with this because I don't have that answer. And I kind of think it's good to not have that answer, because I think, oddly enough, for whatever reason, who knows, you know, over the course of history, there have been lots of other examples of tipping points, you know, of moments where something shifted. And I don't know that we ever know, you know, maybe until retrospect 50 years from now, we'll be able to put together a more complete picture of why this moment, why this incident was a thing that tipped for so many people. But it has, and I think, you know, Michelle talked about being uncomfortable, but it was about time that she get uncomfortable, and I think that's really right. So I don't know how to cope with this, and I think that's good, because this isn't something that should be coped with. This is something that should be dealt with. This is something that should be fought. This is something that should be changed. This isn't something where we should cope. especially, again, Michelle owned it really well, and I want to too, right? I am also, cisgender white woman. I've been, I'm a part of the queer community, but that's not always something that's so visible. Walking through the world, and as much as it is, obviously being uncomfortable isn't actually pleasant in a literal sense, but I'm really glad that I'm this uncomfortable and that so many of my white friends and family are suddenly viscerally uncomfortable. And because, as far as I can tell, most of the protests across the country have been really, really diverse. Oh man, I don't know how to say it. This is going to sound really fucked up, so pardon me, because I don't know that I know how to phrase it well. But I'm super glad that there's a bunch of white folks who are also getting tear gassed and rubber bulleted, and we're getting hurt.
We're getting a taste of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about time that we got hurt too. Not to any of those individuals, right? Super love and care and everything for any individual at any of the protests who has been a victim of the brutality going on across the nation from the police, right? I'm not glad you as a human being are hurt, but I'm glad that we, as the white population of America, are getting hurt, because I think that's going to get our attention, and it's so far past time that we gave this our full attention.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess where I am is a similar place. I want to make sure. I mean, I don't know. I guess I want to put more on social media and stuff like that. But I think this podcast is actually the first place I'm really being not silent, other than amongst friends and family who are already all in agreement, right? And I need to take the risk of putting this out there where people I know might disagree with me. Like, I need to put this out there where people might unfriend me for it. I need to put this out there where people might cuss at me for it. I need to put this out there where it's a risk, rather than just bantering it among friends and family where, we're preaching to the choir between ourselves. And, I need to put my action where my heart is. It's not enough anymore to know that I'm not actively racist. That's not enough anymore.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of where I am. I gotta admit, I'm feeling really overwhelmed about facing clients this week. This is my weekend when we're recording, and this is going to be a lot to carry, seeing 20 people this week and navigating this topic and this heaviness for all of these people. So I guess that's another part for me as a professional, is I'm a little scared of how I'm going to reassure people, or, what am I going to give? Is my transparency enough? Do people need ideas of how to cope? Like, what are my clients going to really need? And how do I give it to them is a little bit daunting right now as well. So yeah, I think that's where I am.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, letting out a breath here. So basically what Kate and I have thought about in terms of wrapping up this episode, I mean, like I said, we're going to post some things in our Facebook group. I'll mention a couple of them here, and then Kate, you can mention some things that you want to say that maybe I forgot. I feel bad because I'm about to steal your thunder, but Kate told me about, and I had seen it already like a little bit on my Facebook feed, but Trevor Noah, who is the host of The Daily Show, he made a fantastic 18-minute long video sharing his thoughts about everything from the perspective of a Black man, and it's an incredible video.
Yeah, he's so well spoken.
He's so well spoken. He really addresses beautifully in the video the people who are basically having issues with the looting that's going on. Yeah.
Vandalism, looting, etc.
Exactly. And I'm hesitant to even try to summarize how well he speaks to it, but basically addressing that issue specifically as part of his video of like, you need to really take a look at why this bothers you so much. And it's an amazing video. So we're going to make sure to post the link to that on our Facebook page because we really want to encourage everyone to watch that video. Again, that's a great place to start, is hearing from him. He just said everything amazingly. And the other thing that, sorry, what was that, Kate?
Oh, I said right. He just like so eloquent, just on
perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah. The other thing that admittedly I need to look into, I just discovered it a couple hours before we started recording today, but I'm going to post it in the group as well. This link to an anti-racism training that it appears to be free to the general public. If you're a therapist, such as Kate and I, there's an option to get 6 continuing education credits for participating in it if you pay $30, which is incredibly cheap for continuing education credits. And it's an online training. So it sounds like there are 3 different modules, that each module is about 2 hours. I haven't signed up for it or started it myself yet, though I plan to. So I don't know what exactly it consists of, but I just kind of thought to myself when I saw that link, how much more accessible does it get if it's free and if it's online and you can do it at your own pace? You don't have to show up at a specific day and time when you might already be busy doing something else. And that also seems like a fantastic place to go if you are really wanting to look at your own stuff that comes up around race and how you can start changing your perspective to then take action in a way that needs to be taken. So those are 2 things I wanted to throw out there. Kate, do you have anything else to add as what we may post about or things like that?
Not a huge thing. Actually, amusingly, this was something I sent to Michelle a little bit ago, but it seems like a pretty cool resource. It's a website that's intentionallist.com. So it's like the word intentional and the word list, but they share one L. So intentionallist.com. And basically it's an opportunity to kind of put your money where your mouth is, use your spending power as a way to make an impact. And so you can like search for specific types of businesses. So you can like look for I'm just looking at it right now, you could look for a bakery that is owned by, and it has Asian owned, Black owned, disability owned, family owned, Latino owned, LGBTQ owned, Native owned, right, all these things. So you can like search for that, and then you can show where you want to search. So you can look in like your city or cities near yours, and it will show you the businesses in that category, if there are any, in your area that are owned by the population that you're looking to support. So I think that's a pretty cool resource. So that would be one that I would want to put forward.
Yeah, and especially with everything with coronavirus and how that has impacted businesses.
Yep.
I mean, these businesses could probably really use support right now from a monetary standpoint to keep their doors open and keep doing, like, hopefully the good work that they're doing. So that's a great resource.
So yeah, I'm glad we're going to post stuff on the Facebook page. And then, I think we were just going to wrap up with, we thought the only thing appropriate would be to do a couple minutes of silence. So I hope that whoever you are and wherever you are, whether you be someone here in America where this is happening, or if you're someone listening to us internationally, just to be in solidarity with what's going on in this country right now, that you'll join us in a couple of minutes of silence for both George Floyd and for everyone before and since him who has been suffering from this racism and the police brutality in this country. So I'm gonna record a couple of minutes of silence, and at the end we'll just say a gentle goodbye and end the episode.